Heteronormativity is a bad thing, but to fight against heteronormativity, this is not the thing to do. To resist heteronormativity, you did not support a model, the primary effect of which was to facilitate the oppression of women by archaic structures. You did not support a model, the secondary effect of which was to associate the progressive movement with these oppressors and destroy its future capacity to defend its gains and to push for further progressive change. Three things I'm going to deal with in this speech, rebuttal integrated. Firstly, why are these structures inherently oppressive to women? Secondly, why is marriage in these structures specifically bad? And thirdly, what we prefer and why that will bring better outcomes for polyamorous people. Firstly, why are these structures inherently oppressive to women? The communities in which polygamous marriages are common, which they chose to ignore in their speech, are largely religious communities driven by canon or text, where the basis of their polygamy is the interpretation of an archaic text, like the Mormon Church, where patriarchal power structures are also prescribed by that text, where most often polygamy happens in the context where men take multiple wives, but wives cannot take multiple husbands. That is something that is not only religiously prescribed, but also demanded by the archaic norms in those societies, because only with one man taking multiple wives is the paternity of the child assured for purposes like inheritance and etc. That was why you're much more likely to have those oppressive structures under polygamous marriage. Why was that particularly harmful? Firstly, there was a constraint on female sexuality. It sent the message that men can be virile and sleep with whoever they want, but women are locked in what is effectively monogamy. Secondly, that led to a significant power imbalance that led to a circumstance in which men may demand so much more from an individual wife by threatening to spend time with another wife, and that was particularly bad in a context when that woman was trapped, and often because of the archaic nature of the community in which they lived. They were dependent on that man. That was highly oppressive to women. They tried to analogize this to same-sex marriage. They tried to analogize there. We tell you that it is not analogous. It cannot be analogous to same-sex marriage. When what might be a good goal is hijacked by a harmful, privileged social movement which oppresses women, no, I can't do that. Yeah, so that's not something that can be analogized there. You had significant harms to women under their model, which you could not ignore. Second point, why is marriage specifically bad in this context? They might tell you that these relationships happen anyway, but we tell you that their model in the legal and religious nature of marriage makes it much more oppressive on these women. Firstly, it is much harder for women to leave these relationships. Two reasons why it is harder to leave. Firstly, the legal level. The mere fact of legal entrenchment means that it is significantly more difficult to leave that marriage. Firstly, especially as we've identified in contexts where the woman does not have financial independence, access to any kind of legal system is extremely difficult. Even if you had the most woke divorce laws in the world, if you could not access a lawyer because your husband controlled all your money, that could not help you. And the fact that you were married meant that you had to go through the law for help. And the fact that you're married led to your continued oppression because you could not leave that marriage. Secondly, the religious level, you have restrictive constraints on divorce, especially on women leaving their husbands. There's countries without no-fault divorce and countries which don't consider women's grievances when it comes to divorce. It makes it impossible for women to leave the marriage and escape their oppression. A further harm is that effectively the state is now endorsing all of this oppression. When the state endorses these marriages, it gives them legitimacy. It says that this kind of relationship is sufficiently good for us to endorse, for us to give all the benefits associated with marriage to, that gives that legitimacy. And we think that the progressive movement should not support something which gives these harmful relationships legitimacy from the state. Why was progressive campaigning for these facts particularly bad? We thought that the progressive movement should not be seen to normalise and entrench these harmful structures. It undermined the status of the progressive movement as a movement supporting women. It undermined the progressive movement's future ability to campaign for women. It undermined women's participation in the progressive movement because they saw it supporting a norm that was hugely oppressive against women. At this point in my speech, what I've proven is that this is something that nobody should support, and even less the progressive movement, because it oppresses women to such significant extent. Third issue in this speech, which largely responds to their material on how it is better for people who experience genuine polyamorous attraction. We thought that a much better alternative was to campaign for social acceptance of those with polyamorous attraction. Because the single most important thing was that these people were viewed in a structure where their relationships were seen in the same light as those in the Mormon Church, where their relationships were seen as patriarchal, where their relationships were subject to misunderstanding and compared to the most extreme of Mormons. What they do on their side is to entrench that, to associate them with that norm by giving them the same marriage. And to campaign for the marriages that they want to campaign for means that the campaign will be portrayed by those who do not wish that campaign to succeed as the most extreme. Naturally, that's how you succeed in political campaigns. That means society associates people who experience polyamorous attraction with religious extremists. The people who experience polyamorous attraction feel the impacts of that association that is extra harmful there. We thought there was much more help to campaign for polyamory as a form of sexuality and as something innate in a person, and not as a structure merely allowing men to oppress multiple partners. That was not a nuance which their case allowed into the debate. We would be happy to introduce things like social policy changes, like allowing partners in polyamorous relationships to access life insurance policies and pensions. Here's why those efforts are absolutely mutually exclusive to what they propose. Firstly, look at the efforts that went into same-sex marriage. Decades of time and effort went into that. To an even greater extent, you'll need even more political capital to achieve this. Firstly, you'd consume extreme amounts of political capital in the mere effort of marriage, and you're much less likely to be able to expend that on changing norms and perceptions. Secondly, we think the debate under our side is much more nuanced because we did not have that guilt by association that they had to contend with on their side. Much more nuanced debate, much better discussion of people with polyamorous attraction. Thirdly, most importantly, the first images of marriages of people, the first images of polygamous marriages in the public psyche will be those of the extremists, will be those of the religious people. Why? Firstly, because of the value that religious people assign to marriage, they are much more likely to opt in first. Secondly, they are much more likely to be willing to use the unique harms that they bring in marriage to bind women to the harmful norms that these religions impose. That means that the first people on the TV in polygamous marriages will be Mormons. That entrenches the norms of those people as the public's only perception of people in polygamous relationships. That was a terrible harm for people with genuine polyamorous attraction. That was not something which we wanted to support. We wanted to resist heteronormativity. We did not want to oppress women. We wanted to preserve the credibility and power of the progressive movement rather to oppose.
Thank you, that's it, Jason, and I'll Alex to continue the family case.
I guess Side Negative was largely ignorant to the case that David brought up to you. So they talked about how we ignore the religious context to this debate, and that's a problem, right? So first off, religious context, and the reason why there's actually no government regulation on religious context is because they always leave it up for all of these texts to then assume what polyamorous relationships are. Therefore, we see when we fight for marriage, what we're literally doing is to fight against the misogynistic structures that they claim to have within these religions, so that we can actually police how they treat women, whether or not they're treating women well, what kind of domestic abuse there is. And I think they also ignored and are very convenient in their characterization of how David posits to you that a multiple gendered people, or like they, no matter who you are, you can then participate in a polyamorous relationship because now it's no more applicable to you when polyamorous relationships are then fought for in marriages. Let's understand what they're trying to fight for. They claim that on their side, all these structures of polyamorous relationships are inherently misogynistic, and therefore more women are more likely to suffer. And the second, they also accuse us of not being able to support feminism. First off, the understanding is that they have yet to provide any sort of structural reforms that they will be able to then restructure if these people still continue in polyamorous relationships on their side, right? So in their side, poly relationships not only come up, they always live in the dark, but most of these are unregulated poly relationships which are allowed to just architects to decide what the hell is going on in their relationship. This means that when there's no regulation on their side, there's actually no sort of reforms, and on their side, progressives are literally complicit in the suffering of these women in these relationships. I don't see an alternative that we can fight for. Secondly, when it comes to the idea of how social acceptance is a lot better to fight for, we understand that as much as the first step to a policy to be passed is for social acceptance to have. However, on their side, it doesn't actually prove. So first, what kind of platform do these people have to be able to voice out their concerns? If there's no progressive lobbying besides them, telling people about their fights, especially when progressives are large in numbers and are participated by the rich, privileged, and the Caucasians, I don't understand why. As if these people then do not deserve the idea of having a space within this platform that allows all sorts of people to speak up about their issues and discriminations within the state itself. Let's go into my constructives because I think the first narrative was quite a wash. So what they try to claim? They try to claim that first, it is harder to live relationships, but I'll tell you why, that when we fight for policies, for polyamorous marriage, women are more likely to get more rights. Let's understand what's more politically strategic to then fight for these marriages instead of just talking about social acceptance. Let's compare social acceptance when it comes to policies and how when it's not passed in Senate or in Parliament as to why these people will be shamed. Why is social acceptance not enough? First, they will face a lot of discrimination, there's no political representation, and thirdly, they're living in the dark, and fourthly, there's actually no platform for them to access to be able to voice out their concerns. This means that progressives will literally be able to then just leave them in the dark and not fight for anything beyond that. More so when we say that when this policy is passed, it applies to a lot more people in the progressive mindset who are able to get up into polyamorous relationship with their parents, and also these parents can be charged with negligence or abuse if they do leave their child outside, if they leave their children or whatever, or if they discriminate. Anyone can be charged with these kind of laws of discrimination and things like that. There's actually no fight on their side to be able to improve the livelihood of these relationships. Now let's talk about why. Is there more politically strategic to then fight for both social reforms and also representation in politics? As we've understood that when it comes to social acceptance, the gays or the LGBT community has fought for gay marriage for a very long time, and not just social acceptance, even though social acceptance meant that they could live in a better world, was because first, there are a lot of political structures were still very much against them. There was no right for you to speak out when it comes to gay marriage, when it comes to gay rights and how gays should be able to participate. People still discriminate based on the idea of because you're sexuality and I'm Christian, therefore I cannot give you this cake, for example. This is a shame. There's actually no one else to fight for you, and there's no one else to then rally by your side. The reason why the progressives have an inherent burden, as we talked to you about, is because one, it's an incentive structure to represent these people because it's analogous towards gay marriage. The reason why we see it was analogous towards the gay fight or the LGBT community is because first, these people were born this way and they had no choice or whatever to do so. They had no choice but to opt into this relationship, but the government doesn't legalize it, the government doesn't allow you to have children, the government literally takes you away from the adoption rights and things like that. You can never live a life as good as a heteronormal couple. This means that on our side, as progressives, what we are fighting against are the norms of the heteronormative and patriarchal society that has imposed upon us. How is politically strategic? One, a united movement to campaign for poly-marriage, which means more celebrities get to access this, more political reputation, more political attention when it comes to these kind of things. This means it also gives you more media attention. If we can give incels media attention, why can't we give polyamorous relationships attention, right? When it comes to as progressives. And thirdly, it comes to access. When it comes to influential people and all this sort of attention coming towards the idea of poly-marriage, we're more likely to be able to then not only gather for social acceptance, but to also gain the right for polyamorous people to be able to raise children, to be able to have housing benefits, and to be able to live together as a unit. The reason why, on their side, social acceptance will still be very harmful is because these people, one, will still be facing in a neighborhood where people will be able to discriminate more likely, and corporations will still not give you jobs because you participate in a poly relationship. Or more so, when it comes to the idea of shaming, it goes into my second constructive. First, as to what happens to polyamorous people when the progressives don't fight for that. They will be less happy with the progressives for being complicit in their suffering, especially those people who participate in it who are rich and privileged in this context, and we really need their support. When it comes to the Western interpretation of the understanding of what polyamorous relationships are, it will be anyone who can participate in it, not just women or men, 3 men, 4 men, 5 men, whatever orgies that you want, right? But it's almost supporting a patriarchal and hetero structure. You want to fight for social acceptance? True. However, you're still placing a premium on marriage, which is only for 2 people and exclusively only for 2 people. You're not doing your job the whole way through. It's like you're doing your homework halfway and tell your teacher, I'm sorry, my dog ate the homework, right? This is actually nothing when this change is not sustainable and doesn't last for generations to come. This means that second, you're also shaming these habits as cheating. When it comes to men who call women out for participating in polyamorous relationships or being attracted to another sex, all they say is, you're cheating on me, you're not being mine, you're the one for me, and all these sort of narratives, right? When men have all these narratives upholded within marriage institutions or within monogamous relationships, you find that women have lost their autonomy and power when it comes to how relationships should be about. This means that men will continue to shame on their side that this woman is a slut because she has 2 boyfriends or 3 boyfriends, right? This woman is someone who has a loose vagina because of all these things. There's actually no aspect for women to be able to explore their own sexual identity with other men, for example, if they want to participate in this. And also, on our side, if you really wanted more regulation on these sort of polyamorous marriages within religious context, they're more likely to have more governmental regulation on these things. Therefore, secondly, how will polyamorous then fit into the incentives of the progressive structures? First, they're more likely to actively campaign for other things that the progressive movements will fight for, because the progressive movements can claim credit to the success of the passing of the laws of polyamorous marriages. Poly people find a place within a progressive movement and build the community together. This means there's no more us versus them mentality, there's no more infighting, and anyone in the progressive movement can participate in polyamorous relationship. The main point of a progressive movement is to allow the options laid out open for a lot of people to be able to access. When we do not do this job as a progressive movement, we have failed ourselves when we call ourselves liberals, but only do things halfway. It's like a social justice warrior online, but not necessarily calling them out or fighting against oppression when it comes to policies. On our side, progressives are no longer accountable when it comes to the idea of options and how we actually allow more people to participate in it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that speech. Now welcome Simone to continue the negative case. And you don't want to be filmed? No. Yeah. concludes the exam portion of the appellate case. And you're happy to be filmed?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This debate is not about the lack of prioritization or what we should deprioritize in this debate. This debate is understanding that social movements fight for progressive values. And that doesn't mean we trade off women that need help. That means we fight for all women within all parts of society, and we don't disenfranchise or we pick which women are more important than others. Secondly, how do you get what you want on your side? Because you're saying that we want social acceptance within individuals. We want anti-discrimination laws. I don't understand how that materializes if you really characterize a world that will give you so much backlash, a world that will torment you or discriminate a lot of individuals between the grounds, or a world that is so patriarchal in society. So you cannot say we want to fight for social progression within society, but then tell me that people wouldn't accept marriage, but would accept half of your social progression under your side. I'll talk about two things. Number one, this is policy endorses more harm to women. And secondly, why do we do it better under our role? And this talks about how we can protect these individuals more. This talks about laws that can materialize within our side of the world. And this talks about why social progression is a lot better under our side of the house. Firstly, this is policy endorses more harm to women. Your harms cannot materialize. So from the first speaker from your side, you said they cannot leave. They have no access to legal functions that can actively help them. Those are things that they recognize on your side because there are no laws present within society to be able to cater to women that need those legal help. Firstly. But secondly, why is it worse? So if you really tell me that patriarchal structures are really so bad, they will endorse it more under your side, the point in which it is illegal. So your men under your house will tell you, you cannot talk to anyone because if you do, this is an illegal thing that we're doing, and if you talk to anyone, they will actively break us up because it's an illegal act. So that's what your side will do. You endorse so much of patriarchal structure because there is no opt-out mechanism for individuals. So even if under your side, women are significantly harmed, they're significantly harmed under your side even more knowing that there's no opt-out structures in the first place and your patriarchal structures exist more. What is the comparison? Under our side, the point in which it is legal, or the point in which there is a social movement that actively campaigns for awareness and tells you what should or should not happen with your polygamous relationships, this means number one, access to exposure that could never happen under your side of the house.
factors why they can end. So that because of that, having a united front or just being able to practice that continuously creates that change within social movements or creates that change within a public point of view. Right now, we have LGBT movements, we have the feminist movement. If stigma and backlash is your right, then 5 years ago we wouldn't have even recognized LGBT individuals because we already have said backlash is already something so bad. We do not go with a moral code that people step with us. We choose what moral code we choose to condemn, what we choose to condone with society, and that's the community that we choose to live in the first place. So it's great that you guys want to fight for certain things, but those things can never materialize if you can actively campaign for some things, or secondly have a movement that can actually strive for great things within political point of views, and etc. At the end of this second issue, you must understand, number one, even if you guys want to do that, I think the only way for you to materialize into active laws or active policies is understanding that there's a campaign that can do this better under our side. This means having politicians that actively have to promote it within society, gaining attraction. So if this is something that's big, they will actively go into that talk, or they will actually promote it within status quo. The only way you do this is if you create a movement that literally stands with society and tells you they want to do this. It is a lot easier for people to discriminate you if they understand that, number one, you have no rights within society. But secondly, you don't have a movement that fights for you. There is literally no understanding for what you want at the end of the day. But thirdly, you give them a lot more ammunition. The point in which you tell them, we will fight for you to an extent, but we just won't give you the right to marriage. And that literally single-handedly takes you out from whatever society you live in and tell you that you're significantly different and you'll never feel the same in the first view. Marriage is important. Marriage is something that people can materialize from, and understanding that you belong to someone is something that I believe every individual has the right to do so.
Thank you for that speech, Kimberly. And now I welcome Rachael. If you're ready. Final verdicts on the live stream.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Cool. I don't think the person is here to turn it off anyway, so you know.
The world's about to really learn some things.
Ooh. Yeah, King.
Panel. The question in this debate, and what it is truly analogous to, is in the early 1900s, when it was illegal to live in a homosexual relationship, when being homosexual was considered repulsive, when it faced huge amounts of backlash in the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s, should the LGBT movement or the progressive movement have immediately fought for marriage and expended their political capital there? Or should they instead have fought for anti-discrimination laws, have fought for the ability to live in de facto relationships, have fought for the ability to be socially normalized and accepted into society, and at the point when all of those things were achieved, would we have been better off than if they'd immediately fought for marriage? On side negative, we think we would have been. 2 questions in this speech. Firstly, what do these relationships look like and what are we normalizing in this debate? And secondly, why is our alternative better? Firstly, what does this look like? So the structural reasons we've given you down the bench for why the first people who are likely to opt into this en masse are religious communities that offer the worst perception of what polygamous relationships look like for truly polyamorous people have been entirely ignored by side affirmative in this debate. So why is it true? I'll step through the structure again. The people who are most likely to want to legally and religiously tie women to themselves are people who believe that marriage has particular weight as a social institution. For people who deviate from these structures and who deviate from monogamous structures within society, they are the least likely to want to opt into the kinds of social institutions which entrench monogamy and have entrenched monogamy for years. The kinds of people who opt into this first are religious people who consider the value of marriage to be supreme and to be important in front of God. Why is this bad? Because religious texts entrench patriarchy in a way that cannot be undone or cannot be made progressive. This is true because at the time when texts like the Quran were written, we didn't have paternity tests, which is why men can take multiple wives in Islam, but women can't take multiple husbands, because the Sharia law, which dictates how sons and daughters inherit property, is determinative of who your father is, which you cannot determine if a woman has multiple husbands, and you cannot have a paternity test. That means it's literally enshrined into these texts
that women are the ones who have a single husband and men are allowed to have multiple wives. Why is this something the progressive movement should not support? Firstly, it constrains feminine sexuality and locks them into what is entirely monogamous and allows men to have multiple sexual partners. That is antithetical to what the progressive movement wants. They want sexual liberation of women, as we set up at first. Secondly, is this enshrines the most heteronormative structures in which men are not only dictating the rules to one woman, but get to dictate the rules to multiple women and leverage the fact that they can lead over that woman. It was set up at first that the thing that the progressive movement most wants to fight are heteronormative structures. These are the most extreme forms of heteronormativity. Thirdly, we told you that this ties women to compete for the attention of their husband because he has more options and can leave them to go live with his multiple wives. That means you give a man unique power in these relationships to be able to dictate the terms of their relationship to women because they only have one husband on whom they depend, and they need to completely satisfy that husband. Otherwise, it is so easy for him to go live with another wife. So even if not all of these marriages involve people who are polygamous for religious reasons, we think there are three reasons why this still carries a lot of weight in this debate. Firstly, there are a significant number of women who are affected because they are constrained to particularly toxic relationships in which men leverage a lot of power. The progressive movement should care about that, even because in the basis of their image as a movement that fights for women's rights, to be fighting for the state to stamp those relationships with their seal of approval is not good for their image. Secondly, because the most extreme forms of these religious marriages are the ones that are likely to get the immediate media attention because they reflect social fears about what polygamous marriage looks like. And thirdly, because we've proven to you that these are likely to be the first people to opt into these marriages, which means they dictate the social norm of what this looks like in the immediate aftermath of legalization. Secondly, why is our alternative better? I'll note here that there are two instances of polygamous marriage. The first is the one I've currently talked about, where this polygamous marriage is informed by social and religious structures, where women are the oppressed party who the progressive movement should care about. I've proven why it is best for them to not be legalized. The second that I'm going to talk about is where it is your sexual preference to live in a polyamorous relationship, which is all they've talked about so far in their case. The progressive movement should prioritize them being able to distinguish themselves from the most patriarchal forms of what polygamous marriage looks like, which are already entrenched in society and which are the reason why they currently face that backlash. So why is our alternative better? Rather than expending all of our political capital, which I'll note here took like 20 years of the much larger, stronger, and socially accepted LGBT movement to be able to achieve, we would expend that in making incremental changes in how you are socially perceived. I'll note here that just because your marriage has been allowed does not mean that social ideas of what your marriage and what your relationship looks like have changed. It just looks like the state stamping that with their seal of approval. So to the extent that people are discriminatory against these people currently, if we expend that political capital on just giving them the approval of the state in marriage rather than changing how they are perceived by society, rather than allowing them to fight for incremental changes in what it means to be polyamorous and what the social perception of that is, then it is a waste of political capital. So what does this look like? As we tell you at first and again at second, it looks like first fighting for things like including polyamory and anti-discrimination laws. It looks like awareness campaigns and protests and presence at Pride, which instead of fighting for marriage, it fights for the social perception of what these relationships look like. Because if you have limited political capital and you can only fight for one of those things fully at a time, we would rather divert all of this expenditure on marriage to change those social perceptions. Why do we get acceptance for sexually polyamorous people faster? We think that there are a couple of reasons. While they're campaigning for marriage, they inherently slow down the progress of including things like anti-discrimination laws, because while they are running those campaigns, we are just able to run opposite campaigns for why we should be included in ADAs. But also, it feeds into the idea that people who are polyamorous are misogynistic, because as I've already proven, the first relationships which are enshrined in law, the ones that get media attention, the ones that compound social fears about what these look like, are the worst forms of these relationships, which means you enshrine them as the norm. How does this affect women? This does not allow for regulation of religious communities in the same way that religious marriages currently are subject to having domestic violence. Just because you have that approval does not mean you get it. Do men trap women because these relationships are illegal? We think we legalize the relationship without enshrining it as marriage sooner because we're able to just fight on the grounds of legalization rather than setting the bar so high so soon. At the end of this point, it is clear that rather than expending our political capital aiming for a stamp on your marriage, we would aim for practical changes that improve these people's lives. We would help women who are trapped in the most extreme forms. Incredibly proud to negate.
Thank you for that speech, Rachel. I now welcome the negative reply speaker, Simone, to conclude the negative side of the debate. Simone, do you want your negative reply?
She here.
I can turn it off.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you pass me the ballot, please?